In this episode of the Awaken Podcast, we're going to deeply explore what it takes to overcome the fear of being your true self. What does it look like to overcome the fear of being judged or rejected and truly lead from your essence? This is a follow-up episode to our last conversation where we spoke about not listening to the haters and tuning out judgment. So we're going to be going a lot deeper today, and by popular demand, I am going to be channeling live on this episode, bringing through perspectives from my guides. I hope that you enjoy this episode. Definitely grab your note paper if you're a note taker type. Get comfortable, grab a cacao or a matcha or a tea, and let's tune in. Welcome to the Awaken Podcast,
where we share practical spirituality for modern living.
Join us as we dive deep into conversations about healing and transformation.
Let's go. Here we are.
Here we are.
I'm really excited for this one.
Me too. I'm a
Let's
little
go.
nervous, but like in a good way.
So let's take a breath in through the nose, out through the mouth, and set our intentions. So what's your intention for today's podcast?
I think my intention is to go all in. Let's do this.
Yeah.
Let's do this. Let's be a permission slip for others.
Yeah. For me, my intention is to have fun and to be a student in the process of learning and integrating whatever comes through. So let's get it.
Love that.
So here we are. You asked for it, guys, on our last episode of the podcast called Don't Listen to the Haters. I said if we got 100 comments or more, then Hellè would feel into it for herself if she wanted to channel live. And I think in the first day, we got well over 100 comments. So here we are.
Thanks, everyone.
You decided that you wanted to lean in.
Thank you for the love and the desire to bring that out. I really appreciate it, and I'm excited, and also I'm always motivated to serve. So your wish is my command.
Let's get it. So you said that you're feeling a bit nervous.
Yeah, I mean, even though I have channeled plenty, it's intense.
And by plenty, you mean every day for the last 10 years?
Well, it's actually been more than that now. Started in 2012. It just feels like 10 years is so easy to just assume that it is and kind of package it up in our minds. But yeah, we've passed that now. So that's where it all began. And I guess we want to start there with having a bit of a conversation about the topic that we're going to unpack today.
Yeah, well, it's really a follow-on from our last episode, which was Don't Listen to the Haters and Rise Above Judgment.
Yeah.
And today we're going to dive deeper into that topic and expand on it. And I think one of the things that keeps us from expressing ourselves authentically, taking up space and, sharing our gifts in the world is the masks that we wear. And we speak a lot about that with our facilitators. So I think that's a really good place to start.
Yeah, so I think a lot of us don't even realize that we are wearing masks and that we have adapted the way that we show up in the world and the way that we express ourselves over many, many years since childhood. And the masks that we wear and the ways that we present ourselves to the world are designed to help us to survive and thrive and feel safe. And they work until they don't.
Yeah, well, I've actually got something that I want to read. It's from our facilitator training manual, and it's just a little paragraph that speaks into the masks we wear. So I'll read it because I think it's relevant and I think it's helpful to understand this so we can
Let's set the
unpack
stage, yes.
So I'm just going to read it off my phone. Many of us have been wearing masks and playing roles that are out of alignment with who we truly are for so long that we've lost touch with the freedom of simply being our authentic selves. We're living in a culture where many of us reject and filter out our imperfections and the things we don't like about ourselves and our lives, highlighting and even manufacturing what we think we should be. This filtering influences how we speak, move, dress, act, and the emotions we allow ourselves to feel and show people. Many of us mold our appearance physically, following trends and mainstream culture to be liked and accepted, changing how we look within apps and filters to hide our imperfections. Masks are essentially fear responses, and many of us hold onto them tightly because they are adaptations we made to survive. With every fear comes a mask that we hide behind. The driving force behind masks, roles, and filters is the fear of being vulnerable, raw, imperfect, exposed, which would lead to rejection, abandonment, failure, and humiliation.
Powerful. So that is a really, really helpful way to understand what it is that all of us are doing to survive. And in previous episodes, we've spoken about the evolution of the ego, and masks can be a part of the development of the ego. And what we spoke about in that particular podcast is that there comes a time where your sense of self, your ego, wants to expand and evolve to begin to collaborate or connect and merge with your true self, your essence. And your personality and the way that you present yourself to the world becomes a more authentic, aligned expression of who you actually are.
Yeah.
So what we're going to talk more about today, and also I'll be channeling about, is how do we do that when it feels so scary, and when many of us have convinced ourselves that the only way to survive and be liked and to stay safe is to maintain the masks.
Yeah, well, I think a big part of that is self acceptance. And we all judge ourselves, right? That's a part of human nature. But we have to learn to love our imperfections, learn to love all parts of ourselves, especially the parts that we reject and that don't feel acceptable to love. Those are the parts that need the most love. We've got to be kind to ourselves. Kindness is a superpower, and the world needs more kindness, and it starts with ourselves.
I think some story time is so helpful in this moment. I've noticed that roles are one of the ways that we develop our masks. So we play certain roles in our lives and for the people around us. You know, there's the classic roles like the good girl, the good guy, the bad guy, the bad girl. There's the roles of the caretaker, the teacher, the know-it-all, the rebel. There's so many different roles that we can play. And I'm curious for you, as you look back on your life and any roles that you've had to dismantle or masks that have had to be confronted and dissolved, what were they? What do you recall? I mean, I'm sure there's plenty. I know there are,
Yeah.
but like, what's some examples?
Yeah, growing up for me, I wasn't confident. I didn't believe in myself and I had low self worth. So I've had to work really hard at those things. And masks definitely played a big role in my life, especially in my teenage years and my 20s. And I'm actually really grateful for the masks that I took on board that once served me. You know, because these masks can serve us for a certain period of time and then life changes, we grow, we evolve, and the masks no longer serve us. One of the ways I masked my sense of insecurity and vulnerability growing up when I didn't feel safe within myself was getting tattooed. And I started getting heavily tattooed from a young age. And looking back, I can equate that to not feeling safe in the world. And the tattoos became my armor because I felt insecure and I felt vulnerable. I grew up in an environment where I felt like I had to be constantly looking over my shoulder. I had to protect myself. So the mask that I took on board at that time was to become heavily tattooed as a form of protection. Like, stay away, get back, don't come too close to me. And ultimately, this was a mask or a sense of armor that I'd wear around my heart. That's what it was really protecting. It was protecting the pain around my heart, the pain of being hurt, the pain of being abandoned, the pain of being rejected, the pain of feeling like the odd one out who didn't fit in, the outcast.
I'm curious what you noticed changed for you when you started getting tattooed and you started to play a role and present yourself to the world in this way. For example, did you start to notice people treated you differently? Did you feel differently within yourself? What shifted?
I felt like I gained a sense of family. I felt like I gained a sense of connection with people who were like minded, people who were into creativity, people who wanted to express themselves in their own unique way. And I felt like they became my people. I also noticed that I started getting judged a lot more, but I kind of liked that because I always felt like an outcast. So now I had a reason for people to judge me, and it was my choice. I chose to become this heavily tattooed as a statement to myself in the world that I'm not here to fit in. I'm not here to take a traditional path. I'm here to be my own boss. I'm here to do things in my own unique way and forge my own path forward. And a part of that was me giving myself full permission to go all the way in and following my dreams.
So when it comes to the specific context of masks and roles, was there a time where that no longer felt true or authentic for you?
Yeah, when I started doing the work, when I started getting into personal development and we started really diving deep on this journey, I started to recognize all the masks that I was wearing and how they weren't authentic and they actually weren't my truth. And it was time to take off that armor that I had placed around my heart. And it was time to start being vulnerable and feeling my emotions and showing who I truly am and not being afraid of other people's judgments and projections and the sense of feeling outcasted or rejected. It was time to just embrace that and to really be my authentic self.
Okay, so what I can connect this to, which I'm sure others will be able to relate to who are listening, is you can use certain masks to buffer your sense of self, to give you access to a certain state of being. And it can temporarily work, but it can also become like a band-aid. And truth be told, underneath, the pain is still there. And so for me, what I can relate this to is wearing makeup or putting myself forward as the glam girl, the pretty girl, the girly girl, the it girl, whatever it may be. Putting that image forward genuinely would give me access to a greater sense of security or being enough or whatever.
Confidence.
But then when I was back alone at home by myself, or in moments where I would feel more vulnerable or like I was stretching myself to do something new that was really important to me, these same underlying feelings of insecurity would emerge.
Totally.
And it's almost like an addiction or a void that we try to fill where suddenly you need more to get the same effect. Like I need to feel even more confident, even more pretty, even more impressive, even more of something to get away from the underlying pain that the mask has been covering over. And I wonder for you if the tattoos and the tough guy rebel kind of image that you created gave you that sort of fix or fulfilled the need, but underneath it there was still pain that kept resurfacing and eventually you actually just had to face it.
Totally. Yeah, I think for me on a personal level, there was aspects of it that were truly authentic to me. Like I feel like my soul is naturally rebellious by nature, and that's a part of who I came here to be. But there's other aspects of it that weren't authentic. For example, not sharing how I was truly feeling, not giving myself permission to feel my emotions or to talk about my emotions or to talk about what I was struggling with. I would internalize all of that and it would negatively impact me. So, those are the things for me that I had to work on and step into a place where I could be vulnerable, where I could share my truth, where I could feel my emotions, and I could normalize that. And then eventually that allowed me to step into this work,
Yeah.
where that's what we do for a living now, which is been a beautiful journey. But I'd say going back in time, 12 years ago, this was really challenging for me because I had stuffed down my emotions for so long and used many different coping mechanisms and masks to hide or to run away or distract myself from how I was truly feeling. So I had to face off with all of it. And like you said, yeah, there was a point in time where the masks were no longer authentic and I had to be willing to let go of them.
Mm.
I want to know for you though, because one of the things you touched on was wearing makeup. And I know that you've been on a big journey with that. And I want to know first and foremost what it did for you in your younger years and how you were able to transform your relationship with that mask.
Yeah, I think something that I have just brought up within myself hearing you speak is that often the masks that we wear can be integrated as facets of our authentic expression. And the question that I think helps us understand where we're coming from is this being fueled by love or fear?
Mm,
And so it's the same, like you were saying, with being tattooed or being strong in your masculine energy, whatever the thing may be. So, for example, with you, I can see that a lot of those qualities that you've described, when you're coming from a place of, I am enough, I am lovable, I am safe, I am whole, those qualities or ways of being can still be present,
totally.
but they're not a compensation anymore.
Yeah.
And the same is for me with things like makeup, beauty, adornment, fashion. Am I coming from love or fear? And when
Yeah.
I'm coming from fear, there is this overcompensating that's happening to kind of hide and create a buffer between me and the world and what I'm afraid of. But then when it's coming from love and creativity and inspiration and security, it's like an integrated part of my healthy ego. It's the evolved version of it where it actually gets to be, like you said, play, fun. It's authentic at that point. To answer your question on what it did for me, I think that a lot of it was protecting me from potential rejection. And I started wearing makeup in high school. And I remember it was when I started to be more interested in dating. And there is the natural hierarchy that is obviously going to be present in school. The popular kids, you want to be noticed, you want to be loved, you want to be accepted, all of those things. And I identified that makeup was a way to make myself look pretty, to be noticed, to put out a certain image. And it was something that I could control.
I think that's what I did with tattooing too. That's definitely my version of what you're speaking about.
Yeah. And then what happened for me is it went from being a nice to do thing, like, oh, I feel like wearing makeup today, to I have to. People know me and think that I look the way that I do when I wear makeup. So then there starts to be these insecurities around taking it away. It's like the comfort blanket, the security blanket that you don't want to let go of. And suddenly you're like, do not take this away from me, because if I have to let this go, then you might perceive me differently. And I'm terrified of what that might open up.
Yeah, that fear of rejection or judgment or abandonment can kick in. So we seek to protect ourselves through that mask.
So these masks are more in the looks department, but I can definitely expand on this and say another role that I played, which is a mask that I would wear, is I would go into people pleasing and fawning. I've spoken about this in several of our episodes, where I learned that if I was the nice girl and I took care of everyone and I was polite and kind and caring, then I would be liked.
And some of that is authentic to who you truly are. And then some of it is a mask, which is a social strategy which you use to feel accepted.
100%. And then the other way that it would come out would be to diffuse conflict. So rather than sitting in the discomfort of people fighting around me, for example, family conflicts or conflicts with peers and so on, if I was the mediator and the peacemaker, And I would step in as that role of the loving, let's all get along. That was a mask that I had mastered by the time I was a teenager. And every time I would do that, it would help me to regulate my nervous system. Sometimes the roles and the masks that we develop are not just to keep ourselves safe from rejection, but to help us to feel safe to survive. And for me, I know that as a really sensitive person, and I was very sensitive as a child and also as a teenager, my window of tolerance was a lot smaller or more narrow than I think a lot of people's were around me, my peers. I would get very easily overwhelmed. And so I learned to shut down the stress and minimize tension and chaos in order to survive. Was it authentic? Sometimes and sometimes not. Would I speak my truth? Would I own how I truly felt? No. I would say things that I didn't mean in order to get through situations that I didn't want to be in.
Yeah, I think that's a big one for people. They don't allow themselves to speak their truth. They don't allow themselves to express how they're truly feeling. A mask can be understood as anything that stops you from being able to express yourself authentically and be your true self. So for the listeners tuning in, starting to reflect on any masks that you've been wearing that aren't authentic to you, and maybe they serve you or maybe they don't. And that's up to you to tune into. And there might be masks that you wear in your career, and maybe they're authentic or maybe they're not.
So many people are wearing that professional hat. They put themselves forward as being this professional version of themselves, and then in their personal life and on the weekends, they're behaving totally differently.
Yeah.
That is definitely a giveaway. Yeah, I think it's really interesting because also sometimes we grow out of versions of ourselves, but we're used to being that way around certain people. And so what was once authentic is suddenly more of a mask.
Yeah, that's
I've
true.
seen that with family where people will say, oh, they know me as the younger version of me and I'm not that version of me anymore. But every time I go home, I notice I start to act like that, or my family expects me to be this certain way and they don't accept who I truly am, or I don't feel like I can be the new me in that old
huge.
environment.
Yeah, this is huge for people in families where you feel like you can't be your authentic self because it might offend someone. People don't share the same beliefs as you. It's not safe to speak up and share your opinions because it is going to create a conflict. So people just avoid it and they don't express themselves. And in doing that, sometimes they abandon themselves and how they truly feel. And over time, that can be something that is painful to live with when you're not being your true self in the world, you know? So I feel for anyone who's in that position right now. And I'm really grateful that we've created a life and a company where we can be authentic and we can be our true selves and we don't have to wear masks. And that's something that we're always talking about in our community is being authentic, being your true self, knowing that you get to co-create your dreams into reality in your own way, on your own terms. And you don't have to do things in a way that doesn't feel authentic or true to you.
Absolutely. And it's a choice. It's something that you have to eventually confront within yourself and decide if you want to bravely step forward into the new world of dissolving the masks and being your authentic self. And there is a right time and a right place for it. And I know from personal experience that there are times that I've gone through where I have known that the mask needs to go, but I haven't been ready. So it's one thing to recognize it. It's another thing to actually let it go.
And yeah, and especially where it's intertwined with our sense of survival, it can feel terrifying to let go of a mask that has once served us and we just recognize that it no longer serves us. Part of it is, again, is self-acceptance, self-love, loving on all parts of ourselves. That's a big
Mm.
part of the work, including shadow work, which can be uncomfortable for many people, but that's how we let go of these masks. So if anyone's wondering how we do it, that's a big part of it. I want to start to pivot the conversation now and move towards the channeling. The first thing I want to say before we go there is this is my absolute favorite thing to do. Hella and I have been doing this work behind the scenes for many, many years. So it's really cool and exciting that we get to share this with you. We don't have any idea about what's going to come through. We're going to walk our talk and we're just going to be in the present moment. Hella will tune in and I will ask some questions. And this is an energy transmission. So you can decide for yourself if you would like to close down your eyes and just listen with open ears. One of the things we've found in the channelings is your brain waves do start to shift. So you might notice that you go into a deeply relaxed state where it's hard to pay attention to the words that are coming through. So if you notice that your mind drifts and you're not able to fully digest the information, just know that you have the playback and you can come back to it anytime.
Mm-hmm. I also want to add that I find that the guides do speak in a way that's different to how we usually casually are communicating. And so sometimes our brains can get a little bit confused or overwhelmed or slightly scrambled when we hear sentences even being formulated in a different way or
Mm,
things that are very deep and layered. Even one sentence can be needing time to fully digest and understand.
mm.
There's a lot packed into what is shared usually. So I think that can also be a part of what makes people feel a bit tired or overwhelmed or like, whoa,
Yeah, it's
okay,
like
hard to fully focus and take it all in.
yeah, it's a lot of information that
Yeah.
comes through really fast.
And some people also like to take notes
Mm,
and watch the whole process. I will be closing down my eyes. And the reason why I close my eyes when I'm channeling for the most part is because I find that it just really helps me to concentrate and move out of the way and allow my whole body to relax so that the guides can come through and communicate. I find that when I have my eyes open, sometimes I am distracted by the environment. So it's a concentration tool. Lucas often has his eyes open as we go through the conversation. So do whatever feels good for you.
yeah.
And don't mind me closing down my eyes.
Yeah, I'm going to keep my eyes open for now and I'm going to be tuning in and listening for anything that sticks out that I can ask a question around. So, this is how we do it. So, Hella's going to start tuning in now and closing down her eyes. If you want to join her at home, you can close down your eyes too and take a nice deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth.
Today, we will speak to you about the nature of your experience as you develop your sense of self and who you believe yourself to be and what you choose to bring forward into the world. Much of what and who you think you are is based in a series of choices that have come together in a similar way to what you understand of how algorithms work. You identify specific situations in your life as a call for certain reactions and ways of expressing yourself. You react to what you experience with what you think is most appropriate to help you to survive. Much of what you think will help you to survive is based in what you have witnessed around you, meaning the world that you know it and the proliferation or preservation of the world as you know it. The question is, are you reacting in a way that is appropriate for where the world is going and who you might be if you were to be your best and most evolved, healthy self? Much of the algorithm that each of you have developed is based in outdated programming that preserves the old world. We invite you to consider that the dissolution of masks and the evolution of your own ego, the personality that you know yourself as, and the way that you bring yourself out and forward into the world can be developed to serve the purpose of even higher levels of creativity and innovation and well-being and even service to others. Many of you are very good at imitating what you have seen in your childhood, demonstrated by the adults and also peers around you. But what if you were not born to become a master imitator, but actually to preserve your own true essence, to protect it at all costs, and ideally to bring that forward into the world to introduce the world that can be rather than keeping the world stuck in outdated versions of itself? What is your question?
What holds people back from being their true, authentic selves?
Primarily, the barrier to becoming your essence expressed in form is the habit, which becomes an addiction to imitating what you have seen in the past. What you have seen in the past in the forms of behavior and demonstrations by those around you becomes the map within your conscious and subconscious mind of what is safe and acceptable and possible. The issue is that this map, informed by what you have seen and practiced imitating, is a very limited scope of what is actually available to you to be. To go beyond the scope of who you know yourself to be and what you know is possible for acceptable ways of being based on your programming and interactions with others and the reactions that you have witnessed take place in these reactions, leads to hesitation, blindness, and even absolute denial that there is more within you waiting to emerge. Why do you tune it out? Why do you become blind to what is possible and deny your essence waiting to be expressed? It is because it represents the unknown to the programmed self.
I think a lot of us are scared. We're scared of rejection and abandonment and failure and embarrassment. So we seek to protect ourselves.
You could say that the algorithm within yourself does not understand how to be with these new possibilities that are waiting to emerge. And so rather than try and find out and be vulnerable in the unknown, many will stop at the edge and turn around. It is the brave ones who are willing to be with the unknowns that will eventually find out that it is not only safe, but highly beneficial to allow space for your essence to be expressed.
So, what advice would you give to someone who is struggling with that right now, with a fear of change and possibility and putting themselves out there and being their authentic selves?
We introduce to you now an understanding that the pathway forward into greater joy and fulfillment in your life is to go beyond the edges of your known ways of being and expressing yourself. It is similar to when you try to create and you come from an attitude of play. You find that exploring and expressing in new ways just because you want to find out what's possible and what might happen is actually very enjoyable for you. It is only when you associate creativity and expressing yourself in new ways with exposing yourself to danger that you perpetuate the blocking of energy and life force. Understand that when you limit your expression and you do not accept yourself and allow yourself the range and freedom to be who you are in essence, your energy system does become blocked and malfunctioning does occur. Much of the illness, frustration, misery, and sense of stagnation that is experienced by individuals and groups on your planet is directly caused by the fear of what would happen if you were authentic rather than behaving in a way that you perceive to be predictable, controllable, safe, and acceptable by others based on demonstrations that you are imitating from the past.
So, what I'm hearing from you is a big part of moving through this is self-acceptance and play.
Play being the primary emphasis here. For if you associate expressing your essence with play and creativity, you are closer to being uninhibited in your action taking on a day-to-day basis. When you are curious and you want to find out what wants to come through you on a daily basis, you have more fun and you take the whole thing a lot less seriously. There is over seriousness that many of you struggle with when it comes to being your authentic selves. You assume that the absolute worst case scenario is what will occur rather than entertaining the idea that if it is true to you, it will be good for you.
I love that. So it's all about play and curiosity and the practice of letting in, of allowing in the possibility of something new.
Yes. And as you go through this process, it will not all be pleasant, but understand that this is temporary. For what will occur in the process of allowing your essence to be expressed is that the programs that tell you that when you be a certain way, you will be punished or shamed or rejected or lose something that you value will arise. And this fear may create dissonance, constriction, panic, and even inflammation or other physical responses within your body. And as these uncomfortable but very temporary experiences arise, you may get swept up once again in your own programming and retreat back into the familiar imitating of the past. For you desire in these moments of fear and lack of control to regain control and survive. It requires that you recognize that you are not in a situation where your survival, your existence is being threatened at all. It requires that you outsmart the more primitive aspects of your system that will tell you that you cannot. For these programs are very attached to repetition of what is perceived as being effective. And when you introduce the potential of risk of failure or loss of control and humiliation and so on, the system does what it is trained to do and interferes. So the question is, will you be able to outsmart these primal programs? And sometimes the answer will be yes, and sometimes the answer temporarily will be no. And it will require, for some of you, patience in certain areas as you take what you know as 2 steps forward and 2 steps back, or 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And gradually you become more strong and connected to the benefits of playfully exploring, expressing your essence in the world. It is something that each of you must train yourself to do. And you will recognize in your world that some people are very comfortable in pioneering and innovating, for they have recognized that when the stream of the true self in connection with the field is open and flowing, beautiful things occur. And in fact, the genius is alive and expressed and experienced, and benefits of immense value come through as a result. You could say that this is like a cheat code of experiencing life, but it requires breaking through the programs of fear and hesitation and addiction to imitation in order to access. Now, once you break through and break free, it becomes a lot easier to live in a more continual, flowing essence expression state. But the initial work to break free of the rather stubborn and rigid programmings designed to keep you looping in the behaviors of what you believe to be what works, the tried and true ways of the past, it is going to require diligent dismantling.
So, as someone's on that path, can we have any final words around practical solutions to support people in breaking free of fear?
We recommend that you make it a daily practice to sit with yourself and remind yourself that you are safe. Once you befriend yourself in an intimate way, you have overcome the greatest hurdle. For once you befriend yourself and you become an ally of your own true essence, you are no longer internalizing the collective mind virus that desires you to remain the same as everyone else and to maintain the status quo of what has been. Once you befriend yourself in an intimate way and you begin to affirm to yourself that you are safe and you are trustworthy and you are connected to a stream of ideas and information that desires to joyfully move through you and be expressed through your life. You will gather the courage, the energy, and the inspiration to begin tinkering with more of your own ideas in the world of form. You will go from tinkering in small and minor ways to acting and advocating for your essence to be expressed in more and more bold and noticeable ways. And soon enough, there is an evolution of the ego where your personality self is living and existing to open the door like a gentleman that would open the door, waiting for the love of their life to walk through. And that is what each of you as human beings have the opportunity to do for your essence. You fall in love with yourself and you make it the great honor of your life to let your essence, your true self, come through and shine.
I love that. I love that. So taking a nice deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And if you've had your eyes closed this whole time, bringing your attention to your body now. Taking another deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And in your own time, you can slowly blink open your eyes and look around your space, just grounding into this new moment. That was really powerful. There was a lot of information in there.
Oh my God.
Let's go.
Wow.
So this is how we do it. This is how we roll. We have our cacao.
Yeah.
Hellè tunes in. I ask questions. We've been doing
you
this since
sweating?
2012.
I'm sweating.
I'm sweating. My palms are sweating. My whole body's vibrating.
Wow. We're in a sauna pit.
Yeah. So there was
Of
a lot
energy.
that came through. For me, a big part of it was when we don't feel safe, just attempting, practicing, playing, being curious, letting things in, trying on a new possibility. Because I think for so many of us, like the guide said, we've been imitating what we've been taught, and there's room for more of our authentic, true selves to come in and to lead the way. And we have to be brave, we have to be courageous, and we have to let it in and to know that we're worthy of it. Like we're worthy of creating whatever our hearts want to create in this world. But we have to let it in. We have to try it on. We have to practice it. We have to become it. And we have to find safety in the play of that, you know?
Yes, the play. So key. I think my favorite takeaway, I'll have to re-listen, but at the moment, is this idea that we can make our life our own love story.
Yeah, I love that. Like how they said if a gentleman was opening the door to the love of his life, but realizing that you can
are
do
the
that
love of your
for
life.
yourself, for your own authentic, true self. Like you can let it in.
What if you loved yourself that much that it was the greatest honor and excitement of your life to give yourself permission to express yourself authentically?
And to go after what you truly want.
I love that.
That reminds me of that question that we often ask ourselves. If I loved myself more, what would I do?
It's such a personal journey. And I think we can get so distracted in the concern of what's been done before, what people think, what am I allowed to do, what's possible, what's hard or easy based on what I've been programmed to believe. And we don't spend enough time going inward to ask, what does my soul want?
Yeah.
What does my heart want?
Yep.
What would feel like the greatest devotion to how important I am. Like if I devoted my life to myself and acted like I'm the most important person and my dreams need to be fought for and they matter,
Yeah.
then what?
Yeah. And that devotion for self then leads into devotion for others
It
and
does.
contribution to the world. But we have to start with ourselves first and honoring our own dreams and what we want to create and allow that to pour into the minds and hearts of other people and inspire them on their journey. So this has been an awesome conversation. We really recommend for anyone who was tuning in to the channeling that you re-watch that section of the podcast, because oftentimes when you listen to things again, you will hear it with new ears and you will find more in it.
Yes. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Thank you for the love and the encouragement. I hope that this conversation has benefited you. And I think the last thing that I want to say, which is adding on to what you just shared there, is that when you lead from your heart, from your soul, from your essence, it's a win-win-win. You win because you're happy and fulfilled. Your soul is very much going to be expressing something that is a part of the greater whole.
Yeah.
God does not miss. Every single one of us is a part of the greater ecosystem of life expressing itself and thriving. And I think it's when we abandon our truth that things get really wonky and weird in the world, and we feel bitter and resentful and we're off path, you know? So it's a win-win-win when you create intimacy with yourself and you devote yourself to leading from your soul. You're going to, like you said, give back to the world and offer the most high value version of you out into the planet. So let's go. There's nothing that you're sacrificing except for, you know, the loss of the masks, the loss of the off-path version of your life. It's scary. It feels risky. It feels like you're going against all the known secure things, but it is the greatest thing that you could do for yourself and for the world.
Yeah. And it feels scary until it doesn't. And then it feels natural and it feels easy and
Fun.
it feels joyful and
The
it feels
cheat
fun
code.
and it feels exciting. So if you've enjoyed this channeling, let us know your favorite part in the comments. We'd love to hear you. Like Hellè said, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for all the support. We love you. We appreciate you. This is just the beginning. Let's get it.
See you in the next episode.